Hello, wherever you are joining us from today, I want to say a huge welcome to our global community. We hope you're enjoying the Developer Marketing Summit. I also want to send out an extra special thank you to all our sponsors, partners, and speakers who together have made this event possible. I hope you are finding today's sessions insightful, and I want to remind you that the learnings don't stop here. If you haven't already, you can become a PMA member or upgrade to an Access All Areas Pass to benefit from unlimited access to all today's content. What's more, you can continue the conversation in the PMA's Slack community. If you aren't already a member, then hop on over and join the discussions today. And remember, this is your chance to get involved. Please share your feedback and questions in the comments section for our speakers to answer. It really is that simple. Let's resume the sessions.
Hello, welcome to the Developer Marketing Summit. My name is Becky Trevino. I am glad to welcome you to How to Go from PMM to Developer Marketing. Joining me today is Ali Mahmood. I'll do a quick intro to myself first. I lead product marketing and operations at So Software. I have been in product marketing for over 10 years, moving the ranks up from senior PMM to leading the product marketing function. And throughout my career, I've really targeted in and spoken to just that technical audience. In previous lives, I've actually gone after the developer audience as we were trying to build up the cloud at my former company. And I've also owned our Rackspace community where we were aiming to build a community that just spoke in cloud and spoke about all the latest technologies in that. Ali, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Becky. Hi, everyone. Ali Mahmood here. I'm VP Product Management at Augment. And like Becky, I've been at many different companies, many different roles. I would say there's been no consistent thread throughout my career. I've probably worked across 7 different industries, many different types of personas. I'm a former developer myself. I started my career in software, very quickly graduated into product management. And over the past 13 years, I've been doing product management, product marketing roles. And for me, it's all about, building great product, communicating that great product to the target market that you're trying to reach, and really understanding them regardless of the industry you're in. And I would say software developers are near and dear to my heart. I still consider myself one, even though I haven't touched code in probably 12 years. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Well, sounds great. One fun part, audience, is Ali and I used to work together, so you get a little bit of the Ali Beckyism as you come through this. And one of the big reasons I invited Ali was just to get that perspective from somebody who had been a developer before and who had transitioned into other roles. And so that we kind of challenge each other in our thinking, because I really come at it from a product marketing and a bit of a product perspective. So first off, one of the big ones we asked as part of this talk was, well, how does a product marketer break into developer marketing? And that can actually be tough because a lot of times the rank of developer marketing comes in from somebody who's been a solution consultant, someone like Ali, for example, that's been an engineer who might be looking for another type of career. So oftentimes, if you had a background that just read senior product marketing manager, you might not be top on the list for someone that may be under consideration. So with that, I thought about this notion of, well, what would someone do to just break that bias and say, yes, I could do this? And I leaned into the thought about it's important to just know your persona and use those research aspects that are strong within a PMM to just, really convince someone of, hey, I actually know a lot about this. And with that, I wanted to dive in with you, Ali, on, what would be that number one tip of somebody that you'd say going into a persona piece that you'd say, like, make sure the PMM knows this if they're thinking about going into developer marketing?
Yeah, and I would say this is kind of universal, that the people who make the best product managers and the best product marketers are the ones who are curious about their customer. And it's not any ground foundational perfect knowledge that you have. It's about keeping your ears open, talking to sales, talking to the solution architects, talking to developers at your own company, and really just being willing to learn. And I think that anybody can become an expert in any persona. And just by talking to them, understanding their problems, where do they fit within their company's hierarchy, who's part of the buying and decision-making processes, anybody can learn that process. That part is not rocket science, and you don't need to be a coder yourself to understand the people who write all of the code.
I think a big one also is to just break our assumptions. Just how I said, look, that the persona doesn't need to be, hey, if you're not a former SC or developer, you can't do this job. We as product marketers need to not have that stereotypical nerd persona and think, we talked about in our precursor to this call, like you can't make Star Wars your marketing strategy. So I think that's going to be a big one, is that you understand really closely and use those persona framework chops and research to really understand, okay, your company is hiring you for a reason. Most marketing organizations want to become a destination for their buyers, for content, for knowledge. And there's a specific person you're targeting, a specific segment of the market. We often use this blanket persona terms, but there's specifically a segment. There's specifically, are you looking at front end developers, back end, full stack? Do they have specific interests? Are they focusing on databases? Do they have some other type of interest that comes in? And you really need to know that specific pain point that your company has and what they solve and what your solutions are aimed to. And then who would be interested in that? Who actually has a pain point around that and how they go about buying the solution? Because then that actually helps you understand, well, what content would I build for them? What are their pain points? How do I help? How do I be useful for that person as they're trying to do research around this area? Because developers, like anyone else who's trying to make a big purchase, they have to do that research first. And oftentimes they're the most analytical of the audiences. They want to hold off on talking to that salesperson for as long as they can. And they want to hear from other developers like them who had experience with that technology before they try anything else. And also it's a big one about try before you buy. And that's where you need to really understand what are those pieces of research that they would need that would also come across as credible, and potentially how you use research sites with your product, how you actually can understand where they would look and what would be aspects like communities, for example, like Stack Overflow, is that the right community where your folks hang out, and where would they find information and what are they talking about as they're researching there?
Yeah, and I'll just echo everything Becky said. There is no stereotypical programmer. There's not even a stereotypical programming role. I've worked with dozens of different development teams, and you would think that, early in my career, I recall most of the developers I worked with being gamers or, having some other common interest. Nowadays, like so many different teams I work with, know more about sports than I do, or are jocks, or any walk of life. So we can't assume that they're any one type of person in their personal life, but what they do share is this common role. And so I would say really understanding that role is important. Are they the actual one writing the code, or are they architecting the whole system? Are they the day-to-day operations people on the DevOps and infrastructure management side? Are they pure QA and just testing the product? Understanding that role is going to be critical to reaching them with the right message. And I would share a common trait that is they all share would be that they're analytical, fact-based. So a little bit of emotion, a little bit of creativity always goes a long way in marketing. But I would say make sure that the meat of the marketing campaign and the content you're creating is actually hitting the key pain points in their job, the key values that you bring to the table. And don't forget that they love shiny new technology, and every developer wants to go out there and be part of AI or big data or whatever new programming language is the hottest trend. So I would say tying it into their interest, but also meeting that kind of analytical, fact-based message that's going to resonate with them would be very important.
This what triggered the thought for me, Allie, was this idea of knowing the pain points, because that's where those good frameworks around the buyer's journey, we sometimes don't want to do the diligence of doing those, of like that, from that top of the funnel, bottom, what's the first thing they do? What's the bottom that they do? And really understanding that really sets you up for success, because it could take somebody who doesn't know anything to go from knows nothing to becoming an expert if you understand every step of that, because everybody goes through this big process, and really taking the time to build the frameworks of who are the different personas, what is special about them, what's unique, what's their pain point, and then taking that pain across the entire buyer's journey will really be helpful for you at making sure that you have the right content at each stage that's, again, useful, because these are no different than any other humans that are out there trying to solve a problem. They just approach it from a different perspective, and don't let your fact that you may get intimidated because you may or may not come with that knowledge, or you may or not come from that community, take you away from having those basic sets of knowledge and frameworks that can help you to get to that right solution.
Yeah, I think that the buyer's journey always matters. At what stage, and as much as we want to focus on the RFP process or something at the very end that makes you the decision, there could be someone who's just in learning mode and just keeping up on the latest trends, and you're just doing an awareness style campaign. They could be further down the buying journey and they're trying to shortlist someone, so you need more of the checklist type content. But I would say it's super important to understand what are the stages of the journey at a whole, but then pepper that kind of content throughout so that you are able to educate them, whether they're just browsing one of their favorite dev websites like Stack Overflow, or if they're further down the process and now they, like everybody on the planet, have a boss and they have to justify some new spend for something they want. And if you can solve that problem for them of showing the ROI and justifying that, their competing company or some adjacent company in their same industry did this and doubled efficiency, that's the kind of stuff that they need, that they won't necessarily be as strong at on the business case side. And if you can provide that content, that's massive for helping them justify even after they've fallen in love with your product and all of your marketing content.
Yep. If that goes to our number two. So number one was, as you're making this transition, you're thinking about it, know your persona, really use that to sell it, to get yourself break into developer marketing if it's not something. But really the second point for our talk was really know your limits, challenge your own assumptions. So if you're technical, leverage the crap out of it. But if you're not, lean in heavily into others. So maybe start, Allie, with your perspective. You've been technical in some aspects. How have you been able to leverage that knowledge you've had as a former developer to really get to know your personas a little bit better?
Yeah, I would say that, even though I have technical ability, I never assume that I know exactly who my person is and exactly what their problems are. So keeping that open mind. And I think that if you are technical, then get to know your product, be the evangelist for your product. And if you can rely, one of the hardest things for the average PMM to do is to take an idea and have it see the light of day in a marketing campaign or a public video on the corporate website. And if you can have the relationship with marketing, and then you can do quick turnarounds to record your own demos, write your own little blogs and documentation and other articles like that, the velocity that you'll be able to hit the market with and impact marketing campaigns is going to be massive. So if you're technical, 100% leverage yourself. And then of course, pair up with other people internally, but don't wait until someone else comes along to create all that great educational content on your company. Often you have to be the agent of change to get the ball rolling with that kind of stuff. Then when marketing sees the impact of it, that's when you get the resources and the budget to support you do more of it.
I love that, because the biggest mistake we can often make when we are technical is to assume that I am the persona. No one is ever the persona. The persona isn't the persona. The personas are an amalgamation of just various personas that come into it. So you always have to challenge your assumptions there, that you're not just making, oh, well, if this is the way I think, this is the way my customer's going to think. No, you really have to test that. And that comes down to my 3 rules of product marketing, which I'm going to transfer over to developer marketing too. It's know your product, know your customer, and know your market. Those things are fundamental. And there's so often that people, particularly product marketers, leave off the know your product. They're going to leave that to the PM, and then the solution consultant. Is you should be able to demo and talk about that product like no one else. I think one of my proudest moments, we work together at the company I'm at now, and was when I can sit there and go to the IT asset management review council and talk about that, because I never knew anything about IT asset management before being in the role. And you have to be able to sit there and speak up and go to the technical people. People really know that in the audience, and say, I'm credible enough to be able to do that. I've learned enough about this product, this industry, the pain points, and the customers to be able to do that. I have credibility. I had this proud moment where somebody actually told me, they're like, you're great in this space. And I sent it over to our forward team. I was like, yes, I won. I understand this. I understand the IT manager, where it comes in. And I felt proud, because you need to be able to know that, where if somebody could be like, yeah, that person, they're not just the vendor. They actually feel the pain I'm going through. So that's really, really important. And I, that's an example of something I knew nothing about the persona before walking into a role. And 2+ years later, the persona thinks I actually have something of value to share. So you can do it. I think I did it in an audience like this one. It's possible. You just have to listen in, to lean in, as we were talking about, to people, the experts within your company that know it. listen into the sales call, create a objective, a goal for yourself to be the person that can demo your product better than anybody else. Watch the people who really do it, be able to answer the tough questions, listen to the sales calls, and don't feel apprehensive about the product. And then if you can marry that product, customer, and market, you can come across as somebody really credible in any space.
Yeah, and you might feel like a fraud at first, but fake it till you make it. Trust us.
There you go. Yeah, like go in on
It's
that. I love that one.
Yeah, it's not an easy process, and I would say that the technical person who currently isn't doing the writing and the videos, etc., probably doesn't have a ton of experience there. Trust us, nobody on the other end is expecting perfection, right? The developers want to hear from real people, and you're a real person who has some real passion about your own product. Just get it out there, get some feedback, adjust and iterate going forward. And the production value and other things like that, those will increase over time. But pretty much every YouTube influencer or anybody else that is successful today is just someone who is passionate about something and was sharing that passion. They found like-minded people to follow along, and then all the production value and the millions of followers and dollars followed later. So don't worry too much.
I think that was the other point that came out, that we talked about, like, just don't be gimmicky. Don't try to get there too fast and try to growth hack anything, and that gets you in a bad spot and makes you lose credibility, where the next time you try to go into built-in communities, whether that's on Reddit or any other place, nobody wants to interact with you because you've kind of lost that credibility really quickly. Be wise about the way you're posting, listen, really learn, and really absorb and be that sponge of knowledge from people within your company, within people within the industry, oftentimes competitors. I'm somebody that follows all of my competitors, follow all substitutes of what comes in, and I just regularly learn from that knowledge. I like to soak it all in of where it came in. Just this morning, somebody's like, where do you find the time to do this? I'm like, I like doing it. That's why I find the time doing it, of where it comes in. The next one we kind of wanted to lean in, and we're already kind of heading there, is this idea about being useful. That was like number 3 on our list of how to make this conversion, how to be successful, is we wrote about being direct and showing tangible value. So Allie, is there any experience you've had where you've been able to show that tangible value?
Yeah, definitely. I think, and we said, if you're an expert, create all this great content and just get started. But even if you're not, don't worry. There's so many other people in your company that want to help. They can spare the hour to help you do a webinar, write a blog piece, etc. So don't feel like you have to be the expert and do all of the work yourself. I find that the best PMs, the best product people, are generally people who are able to identify who all the contributors are and then pull them together kind of as this cross-functional center of excellence within the company. And that's what I do at every role, is try to seek out all the smartest and brightest people and just repeat what they say. And it's worked for me so far, so give it a try. But I would say when it comes to being useful, the goal here is, like Becky said, don't be gimmicky. Don't write the fluffy blog piece and just regurgitate everything that everybody else is saying. Some of my favorite campaigns, and I was working with Becky on some of these, are do the work, right? So when it came to some of the cloud infrastructure, cloud technology content that we were trying to create, it didn't take me mountains of effort, but it took me a couple weeks to do some deep research into cloud costing, understand the options that were available, all the calculators that were available. And guess what? You doing 2 weeks of heavy lifting that you write into a 5-minute piece or a video or something short, you just save somebody, 40, 80 hours of homework that they would have had to do anyways to come to the same conclusion as you. You don't want to impart too much bias into the content, otherwise you lose trust. But I would say go ahead and say, hey, here's the problem I see, right? You have 10 different choices. Those choices break into these 3 buckets, and give it a shot. And you can kind of guide people towards your product and say, hey, we solve problem A and we don't solve problems B and C. And if you can be honest about what you're good at, what you're not good at, your product, your company, etc., people will trust the recommendations when you recommend yourself. So I would say that's, if you're doing the work, if you're providing useful content, if you're not being, clearly sales and marketing-y and super biased, people will listen to what you have to say.
Big one is really also checking out the content that's available to somebody who are going to be doing the research. There's oftentimes you go in and there's just a dearth of information. And also just knowing the different channels. So many people just want to see a video now instead of reading a 20-page paper. And so where can it be short? And then in a space where if somebody wants to learn more, they click more, but you're really going in and providing that in a space that may just be better. There's definitely opportunities, but how can you optimize some of those channels to have that right information so that someone comes in on it? One of the key ways I was once helpful was we started this series. It was called the Deep Dive series. And I had a technical product marketing manager. It was every Wednesday. And this is back when it was like Google Hangouts was a thing before Zoom of coming in and go. And we understood at that point in time that what our buyer was really interested in was reference architectures. That was really hard at that point in time to get reference architectures for cloud environments. So we would let anybody that would come in just listen to the tech talk. And this was particularly relevant to us because everybody was talking about cloud and we were selling like managed hosting, bare metal, VMware technologies, and everybody was talking AWS, et cetera. So we started this series to just talk about the stuff nobody else was talking about because they were, like the just regular hardware wasn't getting any love. So we just started this weekly one, ended up being incredibly successful. And the way we were useful is we would give us you could attend without an email. But if you wanted the reference architecture, which used to take us a lot of time that was being talked about on that Hangout, then you actually had to give us your email. And most often people did because they actually wanted that reference architecture. But what was really knowledgeable for us to learn, and we learned this from one of our solution consultants, they're like, yeah, people just really have a hard time coming up with these reference architectures. And that ends as being one of the really things that's difficult. It's very hard for people to find these online. And I've since seen people get smart about it. AWS now has a reference architecture library. And so this is one of those, but at that time, I think it was like circa 2016, 2015, something like that, it wasn't as highly available. And that's where we were being useful to that community and really just providing a regular content. Because it was every Wednesday was the deep dive, people found a lot of value within that. The last one on our list, Allie, was going in on building communities. This is a big one that in developed markets, usually like you're building a community. Again, we talked about making items a destination, making your customer a destination. But we had in our pre-call to this, we had a lot of debate around community. Let's start with some of your thoughts around this one. You were very passionate about this topic.
Yeah, every company I have ever worked at wants to build a community. The investors want it because the investors know the benefits to your business. And so they want to see you have a community. So at some point, some board member is going to tell the CEO, you should start a community. And if that falls on your plate, the things I would caution against is you can't do this by yourself. No single person at any company has ever built a community and been successful. And a lot of people will like to point to the examples of some other company, they started small and then that community grew to 100,000 users overnight. And there are so many factors that go into building a successful community. But I would say, like anything in business and in life, there's some luck to it, right? There's a lot of hard work, a lot of hours, a lot of contributions. And then some people get lucky. But if you do want to build a community, I would say, make sure that this is like a corporate mandate. It's coming down from the CEO. When you go ask somebody else for help, because you're going to need to bug sales engineers, marketers, you need some budget to host it. There's going to be money, time, commitment, et cetera. Make sure that you have the backup of some executive that you can point to so that will become a priority for other people. Otherwise, it's going to be you with some freemium community tool. You're going to build one forum post, you'll post one thing, and then nobody will come. And I've just seen that. I've failed at it a couple times. I've succeeded in helping a couple communities grow and do better, but starting from scratch is incredibly difficult. So don't underestimate the lift. And if it is on your plate, if you've been tasked with this, or if it's something you want to do, think bigger than you currently are in the terms of time, effort, budget, people that need to help. I don't think this is oh, sure, just get me a junior marketer to help me build this thing and we should be good. And a year from now, we'll have 10,000 happy users talking to each other.
Now, communities are really, really hard to build. You have to have the stamina. I have failed at a community before, had a nice software, had the rest of it, but our company, it just wasn't the motion that we were invested in. It wasn't just the way we operated. And so then it was always looking at not just the headcount that had to support that, who was in it, how many traffic. It was very optimized on numbers that you really have to build around it. So if there's other processes like your support networks, et cetera, that already build into that community, and you can find it where you're creating a flavor to it, that's a different one. But there's also some other elements of communities outside of just those elements where you're answering questions. It's really one, we think of like the FinOps Foundation in our space, where they've been able to just build something that's outside of a particular, almost like vendor neutral. And that is definitely a strategic type of priority, where you really have to sit there and have an executive where that's a passion of theirs. That can't be up to a developer marketing team to go out there and go do. But definitely it's something that if you have a skill set of understanding what those problems and in bringing people together, it's definitely something to go out there and look at. And if it's something that you've never done before or lack, it could be great to get a good mentor in this space. There are a couple of people, at least I know on LinkedIn, so I imagine there's more that are part of these that lead communities, and maybe it could be something that you add them or you follow them, whether it's on LinkedIn or Twitter, and then just learn and maybe just ask questions for something like that. Like, how did you get started? What are some lessons learned? So it's not something you come with. It's definitely a skill set. And it's definitely something that more and more organizations are hiring people to just lead their communities. When I was leading a community, I had a senior manager of just community. That was his job. And part of what he regularly did was go out there and benchmark and try to meet other people within the community that built communities. And that's one of those ones that if you don't walk into a role with that skill set, just go out there and people are usually helpful. Just try to not to go to your direct competitors. So there's a little bit of conflict of interest, but definitely if it's somebody who's just trying to help somebody coming up, you're probably going to get a lot of people that are out there wanting to support you.
Yeah. And this, I think, goes back to what we've been talking about, the persona and being useful. But I generally think when it comes to marketing content, I assume that nobody wants to hear from Ali, right? I'm a vendor, I'm biased, I work for this company, and of course I'm going to promote and evangelize my own product. So I assume that everybody wants to hear from their peers, right? So if I'm selling to developers don't want to hear from me, they want to hear from the chief architect at Google or some other company and somebody that they look up to and respect. And with Becky's mention of the FinOps Foundation, that was a vendor agnostic group, but the caliber of the members in that group was incredible. It was all blue chip companies, and it's VPs of finances at the largest companies in the world. And so that grew very, very quickly because everybody else coming along, of course, they want to hear what those people have to say. So I would say tactically, that's a great route to take if you can get developer peers of high caliber that developers want to hear from. That's just a natural magnet of drawing people to that community. I would say a couple other tactical examples would be, you don't necessarily have to create the entire watering hole and community where everybody gathers, everybody talks to each other. What if you were to create a well of information of no one solving problem X, and you just gather all the best content around that? And that could be a YouTube series. And then the community is the people in the comments kind of talking back and forth of like, yeah, I tried that, but that failed, et cetera. I've seen some YouTube influencers in the developer and IT spaces that have gathered these really strong communities of hundreds of thousands of subscribers just by creating valuable, useful content on a regular basis. So you kind of have to ask yourself, are you trying to educate a community on an interesting topic, or are you trying to create a means of them to all gather and communicate? And you better ask yourself if they don't have other options other than you for that, because there are a lot of communities out there, a lot of failed communities, but a lot of good communities that people already go to. And do they really need to be part of a fifth or a sixth community? So find an underserved part of the market and be prepared to put in a lot of work to source good content, good people, and have a reason for them to be there and come back on a regular basis.
All right. Well, so for Marketing Summit, this is it from myself and Ali. We're going to wrap up giving you a view of what to learn. Number one in our list is know your persona, know your own limits. Are you technical? Are you not technical enough? And how do you want to approach it based on that? Big, which is number three, is be useful. Just, make that marketing that and that messaging that resonates. Know your buyer, use your research skills. This is key because that's the way you're useful if you know that. And then walk in with that community. It's the right one. Be a little skeptical, but again, go back to that number three, be useful, figure out what's the right space there. And Ali really nailed it, which is find the white space, an underserved community. If so, maybe just a YouTube series might be more than enough rather than investing in something larger than that. With that, ping us. Allie and I are both available on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect with you. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Good luck, everyone.